Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. Today we continue our look at the roster for the Empire of Man in Warhammer The Old World. Today we turn our attention to the missile infantry, very much part of your Cortex availability. So what has the Empire got? The Empire fundamentally has a choice of 3 different types of unit, or rather equipment. You've got the state missile troops, which come with crossbows as standard, but they can have their weapons replaced with handguns. You've also got the archers of the Empire, who are armed with warbows. Now, if we look at the history of the Empire on the tabletop, we'll see that it has got a long history throughout Warhammer Fantasy Battle of being able to offer effective gunline tactics. And that did involve the use of a lot of missile troops in addition to the artillery that the Empire comes absolutely stacked to the gills with. And this fits in with the lore as well, particularly if you're running an army that's connected to, for example, Nuln, where the cannon factories and there's lots of gunpowder manufactories and stuff floating around. It's what Nuln is famous for and what you'd expect to see in her armies. However, there's always a however, missile units for the Empire have tended to be quite expensive points-wise for what they are. And there was a time, I think when the 8th edition rulebook came out, the codex came out, that points increases for things like handgunners really bit home and meant they were far too expensive really for their purpose, and they just weren't giving you the damage output you needed to justify the cost. So they've always been on the raggedy edge of whether they're includable or not when it comes to points values. It's around whether you can get the most out of them with your battle plan. So let's turn our attention to what these models actually look like. Now, the state troopers, as I say, can come with handguns or crossbows. It's effectively the same unit, but for the weapon. So their stats are the same. And if we have a look, they are absolutely bang average with ballistic skill 3, leadership 7. They're absolutely nothing special. Standing still, shooting at close range, they're still only going to be hitting 50% of the time. Your crossbowman, he comes in at 7 points per model. Now, crossbow has a 30-inch range. His strength 4 has no armor penetration value, but armor bane of 2. It's also a ponderous weapon, meaning a -2 to hit should the unit deign to move. This really, I think, sits on the mobility of crossbows, and they're not going to be wanting to move around. They're wanting to stand and shoot enemies coming in. This feeds in, I think, in part to my theory that the Empire is very much a counterpunch army, and you want people spending as long as possible walking towards you under a mass of fire, albeit not full gun line. I don't think that works. Might talk about that in the future, not decided yet. But I think, turning back to the crossbowmen, I think the change to the crossbow rules and the way strength works really has had a big negative impact on the crossbowmen. Yes, they've got a 30-inch range, so from turn 1 they're almost guaranteed to get some shots off as long as you've deployed them wisely. But in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and yes, I know I've said this before, I fully accept that Warhammer Fantasy Battles is a different game to Warhammer The Old World. We're not talking about a new edition of an old game. This is a new game. But when Strength 4 automatically gave you a pip of armor penetration, that did, I think, bring extra value to the crossbow. Sure, you've got armor bane 2, so if you score a natural 6 to hit, to wound rather, you're going to get 2 pips of armor penetration, which is going to be really strong, really useful. There's not, certainly light infantry isn't going to stand up to that. That'll go straight through. But the lack of that consistent -1 to armor, I think, put a real dent in crossbows. And I've seen volleys of crossbow fire really not doing an awful lot when you'd expect more of them in the Warhammer Fantasy Battle editions that came years ago. So what about the handguns? Well, as I say, exactly the same stats. We're talking completely bang average. These troopers come in at 8 points per model. Their weapon only has a 24-inch range. Strength 4, AP -1 with armor bane of 1. Also, and importantly, ponderous. Now, again, historically, handguns have in the past, in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, they've been move or fire. So you couldn't, if you moved, you couldn't fire at all. So at least you can now move, albeit at a -2 to hit. If you go first, you're probably going to have to move. Certainly if you've got a lot of handguns and your opponent's deployed slightly back beyond the line, otherwise you're not getting any shots off to turn 2. I don't think they're going to get many shots off before the enemy get to you. It's a big part of using missile weapons is maximising their firepower potential. The enemy will probably be on you by turn 2, turn 3, so if you're losing out on shooting in turn 1, that makes the handgun quite problematic and quite expensive for what it is. Yes, it's got the -1 AP that crossbows always used to have, and that's quite useful. Armor bane of 1 makes them, if you roll a 6, as effective as a crossbow, also rolling a 6. But again, handguns, they've had that reliability of their armor penetration toned down, because again, they used to be -1 because they were strength 4, -2 because it's a black powder hard-hitting weapon. They were consistently hitting at -2. They're only consistently hitting at -1 now. And I quite frankly can't really see that that's enough. When you're paying 8 points per model, I'm not sure they're going to do enough damage to really make it worth the while. That brings us on to the archer. I think the archer is very different, and I'll go on to talk about roles on the battlefield in a second. They enjoy the same stat line as a state trooper, 7 points per model, so it's the same cost as a crossbowman for a weapon that only has a 24-inch range, only has strength 3, and doesn't have any armor penetration value at all, although it does have volley fire. The strengths for the archers come in their mobility. They've got vanguard, they've got skirmisher, so you can push them forward. You can have that cloud of skirmishers, making them harder to pick off. They've got 360 line of sight, so they can be used in a different way, which I think is probably slightly more effective in small numbers than your state troopers, armed with the more conventional handgun or crossbow. They also do have the ability to get things like fire and flee, and they can also have scout. Not sure about the worth of spending the extra points on these things, to be honest. Fire and flee, I think, fits more nicely with like cavalry, particularly when they've also got swift stride, where they can shoot, and then it's more realistic that they're going to get away. Rolling 2d6, losing the lowest, and that being your flee distance, I think makes it highly likely that if you fire and flee, you're going to get caught and your unit will be wiped out, assuming that the enemy don't redirect into some other juicy target. So I'm not entirely convinced by that as a pick here. But looking at these points costs, how do they compare roughly to some of the other forces available, certainly to the forces of order? And I think consistently they do score well when it comes to points per model, with the exceptions of the Bretonnians. The Bretonnians come in with their archers at 5 points per model and only have ballistic skill 2. But their bow is a little bit better, and they do have options to get some interesting upgrades to improve their defensibility or to give them flaming attacks if you're thinking you're going into a meta with lots of flammable units. Dwarves, elven archers and wood elf archers, are all costed a bit more, but they all do have benefits over humans. So elves have better ballistic skill, weapon skill and initiative, and leadership as standard, and their bows are both better, albeit you're paying 10 points for an elf archer and 11 points for a wood elf archer. Should be noted, however, I think wood elf archers have a very different role to the archers of the Empire. Certainly when you start looking at some of the upgrades available to them to help them really chew through armour, they're a very different beast in an army that plays very differently. So I think a comparison there is slightly difficult. You might want to, however, look at things like the Dwarven Thunderers and Quarrelers. Crossbow dwarves coming in at 9 points, 10 points for a handgun. Yes, you're only looking at the same ballistic skill, but these guys, they're toughness 4, they've got higher leadership, they've got heavy armour, they're a bit more resilient. And they also have magic resistance -1 and don't suffer a -1 penalty for standing and shooting. So comparing a dwarf and a human, both armed with a crossbow, I think for those 2 extra points that you're spending on the dwarf, where you're getting better armor, you're getting better toughness, you're getting better leadership, magic resistance, the dwarf crafted rule, you're getting an awful lot for those 2 points, which starts to make your average human at 7 points per model feel quite expensive for what they do. So what are the roles on the battlefield for these missile weapons of the Empire? Fundamentally, I think the state troop options, they're very much battle line. They want to be static. If you can get them on a hill overlooked by artillery, great. So they can then fire in ranks. But their main role is going to be try and just nibble away. I think they're going to be far more useful to people being used as detachments. So a small unit of 5 on the side of an infantry unit that's going to be used for close combat and receiving a charge. And the reason for that is the detachment can stand and shoot as a charge reaction, and anything they take out, any wounds they cause, are going to help with that combat resolution. This is something I found Empire state troops really struggle with, is once you get into the grind of the combat, any advantages they have get worn away incredibly quickly by pretty much anything. They really struggle in any kind of prolonged combat. They might survive the first round. After that, their numbers dropping, their rank bonus is going to disappear, and they really start to struggle. So anything that helps them win that first round of combat is going to be massively beneficial. As for the archers, I think it's a very different function. As I mentioned, they've got Vanguard, they've got Skirmish. So you can push them up early doors to be a nuisance. They can go after war machines if they are exposed. They can go after lone characters in the same way as light cavalry if they become exposed. But what they can also be useful for is simply getting round behind enemy forces. So if you've got enemy blocks coming aggressively forward, you can use their fast and loose movement rules to slip round the side, get round behind, pinging lots of shots around at close range, and just generally giving your opponent something to think about that really they don't want to have to think about. They want to move forward, engage your forces, set up their charges and smash through, and just watch that effect as your army just starts to break, because it seems to be what the Empire do. What they don't want is a unit popping up behind them, and then if they start being forced to flee, having problems of enemy units in places they really don't want them to be. So quite fundamentally different function. When we're looking at missile infantry as well, I think we need to think about them in the round of where they fall within our choices. And by that I mean these are all core options. And for the Empire, it seems the core tax is very much a core tax. The troops aren't that great, but you've got to spend in a 2,000 point game 500 points on them. So you really want to maximise the bang for your buck while saving up as many points as possible to inject into the relatively good stuff that sits in the special, the rare slots. What are our other options? We've got state troopers and we've got veteran state troopers, halberds, spears, or swords. I've talked in a separate video about veteran state troopers. They struggle. I've not used normal state troopers, but if the veterans struggle, the state troopers are going to struggle even more when they're even less durable with reduced weapon skill, for example, than the veteran state troopers. You've also got knights. The knights are okay. They feel slightly inferior to Bretonnian Knights of the Realm. I think mostly because of the lance formation, but they're definitely something that can be used to pay out that core tax. So I think it to part really depends on what is your battle plan. How are you intending to wield your army? The choice of core is really going to play into that. Is it big blocks of infantry? Are you going to try and suck it up and then maybe use some missile troops to stand and shoot as their main priority? Whipple away a couple of wounds here, a couple of wounds there. Or are you going into a more of a gunline plan, in which case you're ploughing those points into crossbows, into handguns, and hoping to cause enough damage early doors that when the enemy get close, a well-placed cavalry charge by maybe demigriffs or inner circle knights is going to be enough to break through the enemy line and cause absolute mayhem. I think the battle plan choice is really important when it comes to determining what core you want and whether missile troops really offer a viable option for you. So where am I on missile troops? I think, yes, there's some cause to say crossbowmen, handgunners, they could be useful as detachments, but I can't see them as standalone units really fulfilling a great purpose, to be honest. I don't think they're going to have enough impact on the battlefield to warrant the price you're going to have to pay for them. And if you want everything shooting, in most cases, they're going to have to form a long line. And they can't do line hammer. They're not tough enough. They don't have great weapons. So really, you want them quite small, and just putting out shots in small units. Archers, I think they do have value. The value is not necessarily in the damage they do. They might ping off a wound here or there, but they do have that nuisance value. They can be used to push forward, to disrupt enemy plans, just to get in the way and be, as I say, be a bit of a pain in the backside. So a unit of 2 of those, if you're needing to fill out your core tax, then yeah, archers, I think, because they can be taken in 5 model units, 35 points for 5 figures. They're a good way of filling little spots in that tax without going massively over the 500. But do tell me, what do you think? Have you found a particular use for missile troops in the Empire? Are you finding a combination that works particularly nicely? Have gun lines worked for you? The reduced lethality has really led me away from thinking that this is the way forward, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you found ways of making this work. Do let me know all these things down in the comments below. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed this video and others like it and want to keep abreast of my thoughts on all things Warhammer Old World, and particularly at the moment the Empire, do consider subscribing. It is the best way of supporting a small channel such as this one. Once again, thank you very much for listening. I am returned to the old world. Have a great day.